Welcome back, everyone, to the Canadian Baseball Network podcast. We're thrilled to be joined by a familiar face in Toronto Blue Jays MLB.com reporter Keegan Matheson. Keegan, we're approaching the deadline. How is the sanity on the beat right now?
Not great, but that's the fun of it. It's, when you start spring training, the slow decay of sanity is part of the fun. Then the season starts and you start fresh, and it's always challenging for me to not challenging. It's easy, but a little different for me because I'm on the road quite a bit, and I'll come home from an 8 or 10 game road trip, and I'll be around a bunch of people who were not traveling, who are a little perkier than me, and I'm just like the goblin who's cursing at everyone and a minute away from a meltdown at all times. And everyone else is saying, man, it's great to be back to the ballpark. Big Yankees series. I'm thinking, like, I don't know what day it is. Today, just this morning, my girlfriend went into our office here to do some work, and I thought to myself, oh, wow, you're working on the weekend. This doesn't normally happen. And it is Wednesday today. So really day to day at this point in my life. I know I go to Detroit tomorrow and Baltimore after that, so there's lots of glamour on the horizon for me. Detroit, Baltimore road trip, baby. Living the dream.
Yeah, I was going to say you couldn't be further from the weekend, actually, so that's concerning. But
yeah, it's not going well.
On a brighter mood, I mean, this Blue Jays team's playing quite well. And we saw Bo Bichette, I believe it was, say not long ago that it was reminding him of the 2015 team he watched as a kid. Tell us a little bit about the feel around this team right now and kind of what the mood and vibe is in the clubhouse.
It does feel close to that team because 2022 and 23 did not in the city. It felt a little empty, to be honest with you. I think they were still selling tickets for those playoff games, those home games, like last minute too. It didn't capture Toronto. It didn't capture Canada like Bautista, Encarnacion, Donaldson, and those guys did. And you're seeing that now. You're seeing it the last 2 days, and I think it's there. I started covering the team in 2017, but of course I was around for 16 and 15, and I haven't seen that since. I think we're starting to. And to start with, it's a likable baseball team. And I spend or maybe waste so much of my time talking about what Vladdy's exit velocity is. Do they need a number 6 reliever? Do they have enough lefties? Is the platoon balance? 99% of people who watch the Jays game every night don't care. They really don't. They want to watch a ball game and be entertained. And I think for a lot of us too, we just spend too much time on Twitter or whatever. And you get the same echo chamber of a few hundred people who are hardcore fans. Most people don't care about that. They want to see a fun baseball team that wins more games than they lose. It's really easy. And this Jays team is fun because there's a bit of personality. They check off all the boxes of hustling and playing hard and all the stuff that your uncle who's a Leafs fan wants to see from a baseball team. But they come back in games. They play an exciting brand of baseball. And there's a good mix as well. You have the young guys just starting out. You have the big money Vladdies and George Springers of the world. You have the veterans, Max Scherzer. It's a special mix. And I've never been in a clubhouse this good. Granted, I do think that gets overblown. I do think every year someone wins the World Series with a couple bad dudes on the roster. This doesn't need to be kumbaya, everyone's best friends. I think that gets overplayed as a narrative. But, take, for example, 2015 and 16. Were those the calmest, most collected clubhouses of all time? Jesus, no. Like, not at all. Look at those personalities. Donaldson, Martin, Bautista, Stroman, all that stuff. There were 10 people on that roster who would be the biggest personality in this clubhouse. There's different ways to do it, but this way is working for them. John Schneider and the staff are nailing it. I think he should be an AL Manager of the Year candidate, maybe a favorite. And it's just all working, man. This is what it looks like when a coaching staff and a front office and a team fit. And they haven't for a while. There's some sort of magic happening. And I try to figure out what it is every day. Some days I don't have a clue. Some days I feel like I'm close to it. But they've always been good enough. Now it's just finally working.
So you actually just transitioned right into my next question. Is you hear a lot about how this team is really close and they get along and they're playing really well. Before we get to kind of who they could add at the deadline, is that something that they have to consider, this front office, about messing up that chemistry? And I don't personally subscribe to that, but is that something that you think they will consider when they add, or are they just looking to add the best player possible.
They should consider it, but at a certain point, when you have a strong enough clubhouse, that gives you the luxury of adding a bad apple who everyone else can absorb. You know, sometimes the best baseball player available is not the straight A student who goes and does charity work on the weekends. You know what I mean? Now there's certain things that are complete no-goes. We're not trying to get criminals on the team here, but it's something that you have to consider. But at the end of the day, you're trying to build a Major League Baseball team, not an under 14 baseball team here. And the way I look at it now, and the closest I've got, I got asked this question on Overdrive the other day, and I really liked the wording about a clubhouse that's empowering one another. And I think that's really the word, because I've been around clubhouses where the new reliever or Joey Loperfido or David Schneider come up, someone like that, and you see them nervous. They're sitting alone, they're tiptoeing around, and they're taking that week to kind of fit in, like, hey, like, is it okay if I go on the first bus, or since I'm the rookie, do I have to hang back? Is it okay if I go into the meal room now? Is it okay if I join this card game? Like, and if you feel like that, your first at bat, you're going to be petrified. You're going to be trying not to screw it up. Now I see guys who are immediately embraced. Vladdy's a big part of that. George Springer's a big part of that. And when you are someone who comes up, I'm trying to think of examples, something like Braden Fisher. Like, he's new to the org. He didn't have a track record whatsoever. And I was sitting in the clubhouse yesterday, and I think Braden had just visited the barber. He had a nice, like, fade or whatever. I don't know hairstyles. But, you know, he had a nice, crisp, new, clean cut. And Yariel Rodriguez walked by and gave him a high five. And Yariel's English is very limited, but he pointed. He's like, hey, and just kept walking. And, you know, Braden Fisher was like, all right, man. Like, it's little things like that. It sounds dumb, but it's not, man. Because all of these players making each other feel like they belong, that means that when these guys come up and have their first at-bat, they're just having an at-bat. They're not thinking, oh, my God, if I screw this up, is George Springer going to be talking crap about me to Vladdy in the clubhouse later? And I've been around those clubhouses, but this isn't it. And that's what it is, man. It's empowering the guys to make them feel like they belong. It sounds, you know, it's kind of a soft skill, I guess, is the buzzword for it. But it's so important, and it can separate teams. Everybody's good in the playoffs, man. You need some of these soft skills, I think.
Good place to start when it comes to thinking about acquisitions is on regarding the injury news on Santander, right? So we got an update this week. He's week to week. You aptly pointed out, you know, there's only so many weeks left. First off, maybe expectations for him returning at all, and if not, you know, what kind of, I guess you could say, like, in terms of getting a righty power bat, lefty, like, how does that affect their deadline? And do you have a couple names you'd want the Jays to acquire if you were a fan?
I feel like the expectations just have to be zero right now, honestly. And I feel bad for Santander. He's such a well-liked guy. It's starting to feel like when you sign a pitcher coming off Tommy John, and it's like, okay, he'll be with us next year sort of deal. And it's been a real tough year for him, because they say he's weeks away, at least a couple weeks. Let's say he starts to swing a bat for the very first time in mid-August. That means he's not facing live pitching. He's just standing still. He has not just swung a bat yet at all in months. So I would have to assume you're talking about another few weeks from there. By then, we're getting into early September, mid-September. Is that even going to work? And before the injury, he wasn't doing well. He's a notoriously slow starter. Isn't this another start? Like, none of it makes me optimistic. For next year and beyond, absolutely. The ball player he is has not gone away, but within the realities of this year, it's just not working. So the positive side, if that's the right word, is that the Blue Jays have done just fine without him so far. And I think you're seeing some names, like David Schneider's a great example, a guy who is stepping up, who I didn't expect, but he's nailing it. And if you look on the trade market, you can always be surprised by names, but below Eugenio Suarez, like, nothing excites me all that much. You know, you could go, like, if you're looking to max out some power, someone like Naylor, looking for some, even if you're looking for some platoon advantages here and there, but it's the same with the rotation and the bullpen for me too, guys, which is that, like, the Jays out of their major league position player group, which is 13 players, they can go 17 or 18 deep with legit major leaguers. And unless you're adding a skill that they just don't have, I don't see the point of a B or C level acquisition. Now, Suarez is the big obvious one. If you're the Jays, they've got money, they've got prospects, they can surprise people, and it's but I think they need to aim really high, really, really high, because it's a tough spot here. Like I think it's still a fine deadline if they just add 2 big relievers and a depth starter or something. The lineup is okay, but if you're not raising the ceiling, I don't really see the point.
Is Suarez, is that name getting kicked around for the Blue Jays? Because a lot of the reports haven't really mentioned him in the tie to the Blue Jays, but it seems like it could be a natural fit at third base, and that pushes Clement around the infield a little bit. Or do you think they're more comfortable going with this kind of platoon situation and moving guys around?
He's going to make sense for them, and there will be the thing about trying to keep him away from the Yankees, et cetera, et cetera. This is trade deadline's probably my least favorite time of year because it's full of
thanks for joining us.
There we go. But how do I carefully say this? It's a time that's full of people who are either saying fake stuff or full of people who have learned how to say names of players in a certain way that gets them aggregated and put in that loop, and you can just sit there and list 30 names and suddenly you're being aggregated in 10 cities. It's a dangerous game, and I question everything I see. That's the way I'll say it. So with Suarez, when I haven't seen him publicly linked to the Blue Jays, I don't read much into that, because when I read him being linked to teams, I don't read much into it. I think you can logically break that down, that he has to be a consideration. Someone who can raise the ceiling of your offense with power for an offense that does need power. I think it makes a ton of sense. And the position is the tough part, because it's really a corner outfielder might be a better fit. George Springer is pretty much a DH now, 75% of the time. Another reason that Santander returning is kind of clunky. But at third base, I love the Barger and Clement mix. Ernie Clement, for my dollar, is one of the most underrated players in baseball. Underrated doesn't mean that you're like a 5-win player that people don't talk about enough. It means that no one talks about Ernie Clement outside of Toronto. And I don't think anyone takes him seriously outside of Toronto. He's an incredible baseball player. And I think you want to have him in the lineup as much as possible. Same with Addison Barger, who's been probably the best story of this season offensively. So it doesn't need to be third base, I don't think, whatsoever. Maybe a corner outfield bat if that was available, but it's kind of like the starting pitching market where the top shelf is very thin and the middle and bottom shelves just don't excite me all that much, which is why I keep coming back to the bullpen. But Suarez, like any big name, this is a pretty rudimentary approach, but any big name that's expensive and talented and whatever else, the Jays belong in that conversation now with the Dodgers and Yankees, period. Like, you can put them in that group of 3 or 4 teams who have a ton of money, enough prospects, and enough motivation that they've got to be in on everybody. Like, Eugenio Suarez is not getting traded without the Jays at least checking on him.
Yeah, and you're being too kind. What you're saying is there's a lot of bullshit this time of year.
A lot of it, man. A lot of it. If a lot of people who think they get paid by Twitter likes, I don't know.
I'm still waiting. Hey, if that's the case, I'm still waiting for my 50-cent check. So.
Getting that check, man. But yeah, it's hey, I don't understand that game, but it's one that is played often.
Jumping to the pitching side, you mentioned the top end guys. It's a little thin. Do the Jays really need to get in that market, or do you think it is something that they can bolster the bullpen and look to shorten the game, especially how that happens in the playoffs so often?
Yeah, unless it's DeGrom's the obvious one. I don't think he's going to get traded. Lugo might be enough of a ceiling raiser, maybe. With pitching, guys, I've been on this for a while, and I think I'm still stuck to it. Just the idea of the Jays being attracted to adding a starter who can pitch for them beyond this year. I think that would put Mitch Keller in the conversation, something like that. Like they did with Barrios, where they traded for him. He still had a year left. He immediately loves Toronto. You keep him. That's kind of like the 80s and 90s version of the Blue Jays. You trade for stars, they immediately like it, and you keep them. And I think that's a really attractive play because this offseason, what do they have coming off the books? Bassett, Scherzer, Bichette, Green, some others. Like, you're getting up close to 80, 100 million bucks coming off the books. They can do whatever the hell they want after this year. So why not get out ahead of it and make things simple? The Jays front office, even more than most, loves to get ahead of their business. And that's going to be part of this. So I don't see any sense in giving up anything meaningful for a rental number 5. Whatever. Who cares? If you can get someone who can pitch for you beyond this season, excellent. That's worthwhile. But otherwise, you got to raise the ceiling. Because for me, guys, I don't care about September 8th or whatever. It's who is going to pitch the first few games of the series. Kevin Gausman's game 1 right now, period. I don't know who game 2 is. I don't really know who game 3 is. And even if Berrios or Scherzer or somebody really steps up and makes themselves a clear game 2 starter up against a really, really, really good team, by game 3 or game 4, you're probably at the disadvantage in terms of starting pitching. The Jays rotation is built for a regular season really well, but you need the top end in the playoffs. And I don't know if they have that right now. They can find it. They can still develop it out of Gausman, but it's got to be top end for me if it's rotation this year.
Is there any prospect that you would deem untouchable in the J system? Obviously, mostly speaking about Namal and Savage.
No, they're not Vladdy. They're not 2018 Vladdy, Yeah. Every single market thinks they have the best prospect in baseball. Arjun Namala could be a 10-time All-Star. He could be playing for the Savannah Bananas in 3 years. I don't know, man. Like it's
he could be a beat reporter in 5 years.
Rock bottom. But it's even Savage, like he's had a brilliant year, and there's still that 2% chance he can come up and help them down the stretch. But the Jays, when you look back through the big prospects they've traded, even their first rounders I'm trying to think back through Austin Martin, Gunnar Hoglund, and that Chapman trade. Like, they've dealt top picks pretty willingly as well. They haven't really gotten embarrassed on any of those. Every once in a while, you're going to accidentally trade Fernando Tatis Jr. for, like, what was that, James Shields or some stuff like that? Like, it's going to happen someday. And sometimes you're going to get Bautista for a minor league catcher. But most of the time, the team that gets the best player in the deal wins the deal, because you're selling at peak value on any prospect. And Namala, Savage, Johnny King, getting up into that tier, incredibly gifted prospects. This farm system, like Joe Sclafani and the player development staff, I think are knocking this out of the park, man. I think they're having a hell of a run the last year. And it's a huge help that I don't think can be overstated. But part of that is giving the MLB front office some ammunition, man. And it's, I always love, like, I'm a big NBA fan. Brian Windhorst, the NBA reporter, his saying is always that, winning a title means you never have to apologize. And which is a different way of saying flags fly forever or whatever you like. And if you can find a move that puts you over the top, I don't care if Trey Savage turns into Roger Clemens, man. It's you've got that banner forever. And while they're very good, I like who's number 1 in the game right now, like the very top prospect in the game. I'm thinking, who do we have ranked number 1? Like, if I'd even consider them to be completely untouched. Well, Roman Anthony, Chase Burns, Leo DeVry. I don't think anyone is at this point. You don't have the Vladdy 2018 level prospect. That's untouchable. The Blue Jays, I talked to Ross Atkins about this for the book. Like, he says they still have running jokes in the front office about the teams that tried over and over and over to get Vladdy, and they wouldn't even entertain it. But unless you are that level, everybody's open.
Yeah, and I think you're seeing right now, you look at the Orioles and you look at what happens when you hold on to maybe prospects for too long or don't, address needs, when they arise. Maybe I'm connecting 2 points on different sides of the earth here, and I'm not saying this was at all done intentionally, but does drafting JoJo Parker potentially make Arjun Namala slightly more expendable for the right deal?
Maybe like marginally, nothing like intentional, nothing done. Like, it's not like you are the Packers drafting Aaron Rodgers when you've still got Brett Favre type of thing.
Yeah.
You know, if I may force my fandom in, it's not a direct position to position, but more just based on talent. Like even if the Jays had drafted a lefty at number 8 overall, I'd say that gives you a little more freedom to move Savage or Namala because it's a really top-ranked guy. And there's plenty of front offices, I'm sure, in baseball who view JoJo Parker as a top 5 talent in the draft. There's probably some who had him ranked 17 or whatever, but you're going to find a front office who loves JoJo Parker. And same for Namala, same for Savage. Out there somewhere, those guys went, around the 20 pick range. There are front offices who would have had those guys ranked 9 or 12 or something. You'll find people who love them, especially Savage, because of how well he's done since. But when you start to stack that top-end talent, like quantity is the approach. No one wants to say it out loud, but quantity and some good luck is the best player development strategy. You can have all the fancy computers you want. There's no strategy better than having 4 or 5 top-end prospects and hoping a couple of them stick. And that's what the Jays have now. Obviously, you're going to want to pick your spots. You go back to the big 3 days of Sanchez, Syndergaard, and Nicolino. It's which ones are you going to keep? Which ones are you going to move? It's always risky. But when you have, and now the Jays do, in JoJo Parker, Arjun Namala, Trey Savage, 3 guys who should be, I think, top 100 prospects. I think JoJo Parker should probably land in there on the fringes. You can be a little bolder, I think. And for a front office that's shown it can be bold, I don't think people talk about that enough either. Like the Jays front office has traded big prospects. People talk about Ross Atkins like he's petrified to do these things. They've done it. And I think when you have quantity, you can be emboldened to do it a bit more.
All this talk reminds me of Nate Pearson not that long ago as well, a guy who could have been included a lot of different trades. Established connections with teams. How much do you think that matters? Like Pittsburgh and Cleveland and Arizona, the Jays have traded a lot with those teams. Now, those teams could also all be selling potentially at this deadline. They know each other's systems and things like that. How much do you think that really factors in terms of maybe being able to come up with a deal that they, for example, had already discussed a player in the offseason and now it comes to fruition in the season, that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's a big thing. And those teams are good ones. Maybe St. Louis as well on that. I think they made a couple Cardinals deals over the years. And when I see some teams that only make trades with other certain front offices, that starts to worry me. It's like, do you have better relationships with certain teams? But if you're the Jays, let me use a team like the Pirates, for example. And when the Blue Jays would have discussed certain deals with Pittsburgh in the past, or with the Guardians for Andres Jimenez, something like that, I guarantee that the Jimenez deal, just for that was not the first idea. One side would have asked the other for much more. And many times they'll come and say, okay, we'll do it for just Horwitz, or we can do it for this, this, and this, or we can do it for that, that, and that. And pick which path you want to go down, and we'll walk down it with you. So if you're the Blue Jays, and if you're trying to trade for Suarez or Steven Kwan or any of these big name players, you can look at those teams already and kind of have an idea. Whereas if you're trying to make a trade with the Rangers or someone who they don't do a lot of business with, then you're going in a bit blind. You're saying, hey, we want this guy. What do you want? And they can come back and say, we want everything. When there's an established relationship, both sides kind of know, how each other works. And, like, we all get it, guys. If like anyone listening plays in fantasy baseball or fantasy football, like there's the one guy in your league who's an idiot who won't make any trades and he wants all of your draft picks. Then there's the one guy who you can target when you want to screw them over and really win a trade. And then there's 2 people who are sensible, usually in most fantasy leagues. It's the same in Major League Baseball, man, just at different levels. And if you know what prospects they already like, that saves you a bunch of the BS off the top. It's like, listen, we know you like these 3 prospects from last time we talked. Would you do them for this guy? And it can help you move a little quicker.
Are you this sensible idiot or the one that's taking advantage of people in that situation?
I'm too conservative. I hold my chips way too long. And I believe in old players way too long. I'm the guy with like the 31-year-old running backs rotting on my roster, but I fall in love with them. I can't give up.
So I guess my last question is, what does an ideal deadline look like for this Blue Jays team? If you're sitting in Ross Atkins' chair, what do you need to get accomplished, and what would you like to get accomplished?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to think of what an ideal realistic deadline, something that I can actually see happening. And of course, you want DeGrom and Suarez or whatever, but ideal realistic would be one very good reliever, one good reliever, and then either a starter or a hitter. I think it starts in the bullpen, though. Something along the level of what they did with Jordan Hicks a couple of years ago. And that move worked out. The season just didn't. So it was fine. Like, that's a good blueprint of what to do. And you need one very good reliever. Whether you are swinging absolutely huge on a Duran or someone like that going to Cleveland. But you need somebody who can pitch in the 8th inning. Because Jimmy Garcia, I'm in the same place with him as I am with Anthony Santander. I love Jimmy. Great dude. Love watching him pitch. You cannot assume he's going to pitch this season. Saying that, like, I think he will, but you got to be prepared. So I think you need someone who can be pitching in the 8th inning, high leverage in the playoffs, like another closer. Then you need
such as that? Who are some of the names that you would think would be targeted in that situation?
I think you go big, man. I think you look at the Durans. I think you make the call on Mason Miller. I think you aim really high on that. Like, I think you look for another closer. Jeff Hoffman's still your guy in the 9th, but I think you look for another established major league closer for the playoffs. Then you look for another good reliever, like someone like when they brought in Chad Green, like a guy who's going to be rock solid in the 5th or 6th inning if you need him, so that you're not rolling the dice or going to a Justin Brule type of thing. And it's the Jays have really nailed a lot of those this year, but that makes you a great bullpen, another closer and a good one. And then you need to make an impact somewhere. And this is the luxury of the Jays right now, is that their rotations, it's good enough. Their lineup's good enough. You can go either direction. The bullpen for me is the true need, period, like need. But beyond that, you can kind of pick your poison between the rotation and the lineup. So a couple of very good relievers plus a Suarez, home run, best deadline in a long time. A couple of very good relievers plus even someone like Mitch Keller, who you can play off as like, this helps us in 26 and beyond. Sure. Good enough. It's got to be more than the bullpen. I think you have to handle the bullpen number one, no matter what. You cannot get to October. Like, it would be a disaster if this team gets to October and they just get out bullpenned. It's you can't let these opportunities slip by, man. They might not come for another decade. Add to the bullpen and then do one more thing. There's got to be that one more thing, because in 2015, people didn't care about the Blue Jays because they were winning baseball games. They cared because they'd heard of Troy Tulowitzki. They'd heard of David Price. And the little old Blue Jays were suddenly going out and getting the big guys. Not New York, not LA. The Jays went and, like, shook up baseball. The Jays need a move like that, like a move that makes people in New York say, oh, shit. A move that makes LA say, oh, shit. And in past deadlines, this team has made some solid baseball moves, but I don't think there's been fireworks. I don't think there's been that spice. The bigger, the better, man. And for as much as I've talked about this deadline over the past few weeks, I just keep coming back to the idea of, if you're not going to do it now, when the hell are you going to do it? Like, there's never been a better time. The AL is wide open. You've got the money to reload next year if you get rentals. Like, this is, if you were setting up an MLB The Show franchise to have some fun with a trade deadline, this is what you would do. It's wide open for them.
Yeah, and now we'll see what they do. I say this every time. We didn't solve anything today. We had some good ideas, but it was a lot of fun. So, Keegan, we appreciate you taking the time to do this today.
Oh, thanks for having me, fellas. I always enjoy it.